on. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure you are familiar with the adagio that the customer is king, right? Ask any marketeer and he'll tell you that in order to drive the success of our organizations, to improve our organizational performance, we no longer need to look at customer satisfaction. That's an outdated concept. We now need to look at the customer experience. And the customer experience is the grand total of all the interactions that a customer has throughout its entire relationship with a particular brand, a product, or an organization. Well, I say that the marketeers have got it wrong. It's not the customer experience that matters, it's the employee experience. Right? And I think that's because we have our stakeholder priorities mixed up. For decades, we used to say, you know, what's most important first? That is the shareholders. Second, that's the customer. And third, that's the employee. But what if we turn it around? If we say, okay, what if we first take good care of our employees? If we make sure that they have the right tools to do their job, that they can do their job in an environment which makes the best use of their talents and interests, and if we just make sure that we take good care of our employees so that they can take good care of our customers, right? Which in turn will be good for our shareholders. That is what we are now calling part of the customer, the employee experience. So it sounds like a good thing for facilities professionals, right? Well, both yes and no. Yes, because you have an important role to play, but no, because in my research thus far, in my interactions with companies and the facilities management departments, I've seen that the focus has not been as much on the employee experience, but much more on employee well-being, right? Or on employee satisfaction. There's a lot of resources being invested in having the right furniture for employees, right? Standing desks, everything ergonomic, having apps by which we can control our own light, climate control to prevent sick building syndrome. That's well-being, right? Having nice art on the walls, making sure that everything looks fancy, having good amenities, foosball tables all around. That might be good for employee satisfaction, but is it good for the employee experience? Right? Just like the customer experience, it's about all the interactions that an employee has with the organization that he or she is working for. And that means that we need a coherent, integrated approach with all these interactions about the workplace, about systems, and management practices. Okay. This all sounds nice. Is this just a concept? No, in a recent survey that I've done with my colleagues, Christine Derry and Ina Sebastian from the MIT Center for Information Systems Research, we have found this link between the employee experience and a better customer experience, as expressed by Net Promoter Scores, better Net Promoter Scores. It's also that we've seen that this leads to better innovative capacity, and that organizations that do really well in the employee experience also outperform their direct competitors. So we need to pay attention to that. How do we do that? That's where the digital workplace comes in. Digital workplace is not a new concept per se. It has been around for a long time. It's been started by all these new competitive pressures, right, internationally, changing employee needs, new technology developments. And you have probably seen it all around you in the last decade. It changes how employees can work, when and where they can work. And not just in your organizations, you'll see it all around you. You'll see people working in cafes, in bars, in trains, even in airplanes. I myself, I just returned from a particularly long trip from New Zealand, a 27-hour flight. It was a bit of a bumpy flight, but I can assure you that with all the onboard technology, right, there were power plugs in there, there was onboard Wi-Fi. With my laptop that had all my documents digitized, I could answer my students' questions in real time. For that one day, that Airbus A380 that I was on became my workplace. And that, of course, these technological developments have had tremendous impacts on our physical work environment as well. Organizations are now looking for physical minimums and virtual optimums, right? They're looking for how do we manage employees in this new environment. In a nutshell, we can say that digital workplaces are the physical, cultural, and digital arrangements that simplify working life in complex, dynamic, and often unstructured working environments. As I said, this is not new. I've been doing research on this since 2009. But when I started, I didn't have this definition, right? And I realized that the digital workplace meant a whole lot of things to a whole lot of people. And for an academic that wants to measure things, I was like, how do I start? Right? So I started making a list of all the practices that, according to experts, practitioners, academics, were considered digital workplace practices. And I wanted to know which of these practices actually contribute to better organizational performance. And I turned this list into a survey, which I called the New Ways of Working Barometer. It ran between 2011 and 2014, and over 300 organizations that were implementing these digital workplace changes, that were going on these journeys, had filled in this instrument. At the same time, my colleagues at MIT CISR had done qualitative studies, interviews with 63 top executives from 27 large global organizations. And together we came up with this digital workplace framework, right? And we saw that there's different dimensions, different design elements to the digital workplace. I'm sure you are familiar with some of them. I'll go through them quickly. The first is space. Right? The physical work environment has been the traditional embodiment of the workplace, so it also plays an important part in the digital workplace. We have seen organizations, nearly all of them, that say we now have open and flexible workplaces. Okay, that's a start. There are also others that say we now have activity-based workplaces. We have inspiring work environments, environments in which we can optimize collaboration and communication. We saw organizations that were trying to make the most out of co-working spaces, that were saying, okay, we are now also wanting employees to work at home or at third workplaces, right? And then you're no longer just in the realm of space, you're also in the realm of systems. And then I'm not just talking about the laptops and the smartphones that you need, no, about the entire digital ecosystem that you need, an entire workflow that is digitized so that you can truly work at any time and at any place. That also means cloud-based solutions for unified communication and collaboration, databases, knowledge databases where people can find each other, can connect with knowledge, ideas. Also make sure that people can connect both physically and virtually. Enterprise social media. Also a really important part, though take-up, especially around the time that I did my barometer measurements, was patchy. Right, so for the organizations that did have this as a really integral part of their digital workplace journey, we saw that it helped them to shine a light in all the corners of their organization. It really helped to amplify the employee voice, to make sure that employees were able to transcend silos and hierarchies within the organization, right? That their ideas are heard and used to improve the innovation within the organization. But as I said, take-up has been patchy, so also symbols were tremendously important. We saw organizations changing their logos, creating slogans, entire mission and vision statements to ensure that they could take people on that journey on how the way they are working is actually changing. So these are design elements, but all of those are for naught if you do not have the right sustaining leadership. Right? If you do not have a CEO or top executives that really walk the talk, then you might as well not do it at all. Right? You also need a single person at the strategic table. If you want to make the digital workplace and the employee experience a success, you need to have someone to look into that integrated whole and really has that as his or her responsibility. You can have teams that coordinate from all different areas, from facilities, from HR, IT, communication, legal, but in the end you need someone that is accountable for making sure that this works. At the middle management level, you need middle managers who trust their employees and who provide autonomy. What's also important is transparency, not just for leadership, but also for systemic learning. What I've seen is that there is not one organization that is able to do everything right the first time. Right? This is not a set track that you go on with a beginning and end stage. It's a continuous journey that you need to improve on. You need to fail forward. Use agile design principles to really look into, okay, what is working, what isn't working. You need to listen to the employees, right? Have pulse surveys, listen to the, what's being said on enterprise social media, use Internet of Things sensors to gather data on what's working, what isn't. So 6 dimensions in total, and if you'd like to know more, you can check out the research briefing in which it was first introduced. Now the problem with all these dimensions and practices is that if you pile them onto what is already being done in the organization, you have the risk of creating what we like to call speed bumps, right? And that's because with all the new data, all the new information that you make available, all the new practices, procedures, regulations that you introduce, if it just piles on and it doesn't make anything more easy, then it gets really hard to get things done. Speed bumps can be all kinds of things, right? This first speed bump, that can be your laptop that doesn't really work well with the video conferencing tools in meeting spaces, right? That the first 15 minutes of every meeting are spent just plugging in cables and resetting software, dialing in people, lost time, right? The other speed bump can be all the rules and regulations that make it so hard to get approvals when you want to get a project done. The next one can be the VPN. That works 95% of the time, but just when you're about to save your last hour of work or so, freezes the connection, and you can start all over again. Right? It's safe to say that workplace speed bumps ruin the employee experience. So what you need is this integrated approach, right? This coherent approach where people from facilities, from IT, from HR, from communications and legal all come together and look into, okay, what are some of the procedures, what are some of the processes that are actually slowing things down for our employees? And can we help to remove those? All that unnecessary bad complexity, essentially. Bad complexity houses in these speed bumps. And they take time away from employees that they could spend working on good complexity, right? If we want to work towards the strategic goals of our organization, that's complex, that's hard. We want to come up with new ideas, new products, new services, so you don't want to deal with all that bad complexity. You want to focus on the good complexity. It's also safe to say that new workspaces are not the answer. Right, for many organizations, moving to a new work environment has been the starting point of their digital workplace transformation journey. But out of all those elements, all those dimensions that I've just showed you in the framework, elements, practices in space, they were the least related to organizational performance. So designing new spaces is not the answer, or at least not just by itself. Then what is? How do we build value and create great work environments? Well, what we did see as being really functional, first thing were practices that build employee connectedness, that help employees to connect to each other, help to connect to stakeholders, to new ideas and information. Right? So in terms of the physical work environment, these are the organizations that know about the Allen curve, that place staircases and elevators in strategic positions to create collisionable hours, to make sure that people run into each other and get to share ideas. It's also about placing that really good coffee machine in such a location that people from both the bottom and the top of the organization get to meet there. Right? It's the systems, the enterprise social media that help to connect people with each other, both physically within a building and also around the world. You also need responsive leadership, which means that If the top management, as I said, is not walking the talk, then you might not do these things at all, right? If they are saying, well, you need to use enterprise social media, they don't use it themselves, then forget about it. You need to listen to your employees and really check, okay, what's important here? If I create a scatter plot of all the organizations in my barometer study, you'll see that there's not one organization that is either focusing only on connectedness or on responsive leadership. You need to do both simultaneously. And if you do that, right, then you'll create business value. On a composite measure that we did in my study that looked at growth in market share, the ability to attract new customers, growth in revenue, all these combined, on a scale of 1 to 100%, we see that organizations in the bottom left of our graph score 48% out of 100. The top 25 in the bottom right, 76%. Right, this is a significant difference and really warrants investing in both employee connectedness and responsive leadership. And if you want to know more, I recommend that you check out this reference here, which also has a nice case study about a particularly successful Asian bank. In the interest of time, I won't go into the entire case study here, but I would like to share with you the main takeaway from that case study, and that is map employee journeys, right? The entire employee experience is built upon all these employee journeys, whether that is onboarding, having a meeting with someone on the other side of the world, or claiming your expense reports, whatever it is, you need to map out all the steps that it takes to do these things. And can you take out steps that are unnecessary? Right? Can you automate steps using new technologies? Can you make it easier for people to get work done in your organization? So you need to do this, but at the same time also need to take into account what's important is mobility over mobile, right? Do not just introduce all these new technologies, all these gadgets and gizmos, foosball tables, latest laptops, smartphones. That's not what it's about. It's about creating mobility, right? That people can work in the way that best fits their personal characteristics. Digitize for simplicity, but network for complexity. Right? Technology can help us to really get rid of certain speed bumps, but at the same time, you also need to take employee connectedness into account. That's where the enterprise social media tools, for instance, come into play, because people need to network with each other to really tackle those complex issues that will drive your performance forward. Elevate the employee experience, not just well-being. As I said, it's not about the gadgets and the gizmos, it's about the experience that people have. Right, their interactions with you over time, and you can't just do that by yourselves. To do that, you'll need to gather data and feedback from multiple and diverse sources. Having one employee survey a year will not cut it. A biannual survey, no. You need to continuously collect data through pulse surveys, enterprise social media, even just talks you might have in the hallway to see, okay, how can we make your employee experience better? And then you need to appoint a senior leader to orchestrate this digital workplace. Not a cross-functional team, but really someone who can be held accountable, right? Now, is this the 5-step plan towards success and the greatest employee experience possible? Well, I personally don't believe in 5-step plans, but I do think that this is a good start and a way to get you a long way to winning the hearts and minds of your employees. And with that, I would like to leave you today, and thank you for your attention.